conference is just wrapping up. How have you rated Kemi's speech that's just finished?
I agree with every single word. Fantastic policies, all centred around the economy, all centred about reducing the size of the state, lowering taxes, giving people more opportunities, and kind of policies that we as a party should always be promoting. What I'm sad about is that in those 14 years in power, we didn't do any of those things. Now, I'm glad we're going to do them now. The problem is we're not in power. So we've got a great policy platform, but we now need to ensure that that can be implemented in government. We can only do that if we get enough votes to implement any kind of policy. So we still need to think about how we're going to get the right of centre in British politics to come together to implement the policies that Kemi has outlined.
As you say, to get into government, you've got to win an election. What's the narrative the Conservatives will have to use to win next time round?
So it's got to be a mixture. What I liked about Kemi's speech is that it really got to grips with the economic issues that we're facing, and also the lack of the ability of people to do what they want to do because they're taxed too much tax, too much state spending, and not enough personal freedom. She dealt with so many of those issues brilliantly. But you don't win purely on that. You've also got to look at the other issues the country faces. So immigration, I don't think that was discussed in her speech today, but it's been discussed throughout the conference. The general decline in our cultural standing, the feeling that Britain's cultural heritage is being undermined by the left and by the woke agenda. I'm glad that the net zero issue has been tackled. That was another thing that was necessary to deal with. But there are a lot of other issues that we need to bring together. And so for that reason, this is a fantastic way forward, but we need to build on it. We need to develop policies that's going to attract a wider group of people. And as I've said all the way through this conference, work with others to make it happen.
You say work with others. Do you mean Reform when you say that?
Yeah, look, Reform and the Conservatives are pretty much in so many ways on the same page on policy issues. Now, I think Reform's got a way to go on their economic development, their policies on that side of things. There are a few differences there. But generally speaking, Reform and Conservative are pretty much two sides of the same coin. There isn't that much difference. I think if Nigel was here today, he'd probably be agreeing with pretty much everything that Kemi has said. So what I don't want is to have this division on the right to carry on to the extent that none of these policies can be implemented because the left have managed to scrape through again with some kind of progressive alliance. That's what really worries me, because I don't think the country can afford another 5 years of socialism.
Of course, Reform are some way ahead in the polls of the Tory party. Would you accept being the junior partner in any agreement?
Look, the British people elect MPs, and whichever party has the most MPs is the senior partner. That's something that the British people will decide. But I do think that if there is a greater number of Reform MPs and a lower number of Conservative MPs, clearly we would have to work together. It's a national interest. It shouldn't be about party interest. It should be about how we save our country from socialism. And I think that whatever the outcome of the next election, if there's enough Conservatives and Reform MPs that can work together, and maybe the Unionists of Northern Ireland, you've got a right of centre group of MPs that will put the national interest first. So that is what we've got to aim for. Now, look, you never know. Conservatives may win a majority. Reform might win a majority, and we won't need each other. But the way the polls are at the moment, I would say that a hung parliament is quite likely. And so I want the right of centre to get together rather than the left of centre, which I think they would do. I'm sure the Liberal Democrats would prop up a Labour government and Ed Davey would be Deputy Prime Minister. I don't want that. Last thing I want is the Greens and Jeremy Corbyn and the SNP having a say. So we have to fight the battle against what I think would be a far left government compared to what we need is a right of centre government.
There's been speculation about your own future. Do you see your future with the Tory party still?
So I've been a member of the Conservative Party since I was 14. I've been to every party conference pretty much since 1982. I'm a Conservative and I'm always going to be a Conservative. But what we need to do is to realise that the right of British politics is now fragmented into two different parties. If Margaret Thatcher was our leader today, I think pretty much most people in Reform would be here at this conference because the right would be united. My aim is to bring the right together.
One final question, Andrew. When was the last time you spoke to Nigel Farage?
I speak to him quite regularly. I see him in the House of Commons all the time. We're usually in the same voting lobby, voting together. He's a good man. He's been a friend of mine for a considerable time, about 23 years. So I'm always happy to talk to Nigel. And I hope one day we can all be united together, fighting to save our country and to put the patriotic interests of Britain first. And that's what I've always believed in. I know he believes in that. I believe Kemi believes the same. And I think we need to make this happen.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.